gar mil magat agus fáiltíom raibh an deis páirte glacu sa díospóireach seo agus fáiltíom raibh an sos cóga freisin a chánig an sos cóga sin tar éis Mariú na slúte raibh an sos cóga sin de bhar nach ramuidena an éon rud a dhéanamh mar ní ramuidena an ar goth úsáid. I welcome the opportunity to take part in this, and I think I have 9 minutes when they fix the clock. I'm just anxious that I'll come and keep an eye on it. I want to thank Sinn Féin for working hard on the ground to get cross-party support for this motion. I think it's very important. I also see where people before profit are coming from, my own sense of impatience, but I went with trying to get the most voices on board. I do think that the Israeli ambassador needs to be hauled in, actually, and I see where people for profit are coming from. But I'll stick to this motion for the moment, and I welcome the ceasefire. And I actually spoke last week on it, and it's difficult to speak on this topic without getting emotional, Minister, and I welcome the work you've done on it, and I welcome the extra time given to me by the Rural Independents, because it is difficult to put emotion aside and actually focus in on what we're talking about. And so we have a ceasefire. We have a ceasefire after 248 Palestinian people lost their lives, 66 of whom were children, 39 women and 17 elderly people. And of course, I condemn the loss of life in Israel as well. Equally, but the imbalance of power is absolutely palpable. And if we just look at the figures, and again, I am not comparing one death with another, and the 12 Israeli people, including 2 children and an Israeli soldier that lost their lives, must be condemned. But we cannot ignore the figures that are here and the imbalance of power, and neither can we ignore the swift action from Europe and from our own country in relation to what has been described as piracy in the skies. And honestly, I read it with utter disbelief today when I see that Europe acted as one with 27 voices. Nobody was killed. What has happened is certainly deplorable, and I condemn it. But nobody lost their lives, and yet 27 European countries stood together to condemn, to strongly condemn the forced landing. We called it piracy in the sky. Micheál Martin the Taoiseach reflected on the erosion of democratic norms. We have an article in the paper today from a former ambassador, and indeed the article is in the Irish Times, and significantly there isn't a single line on Gaza. It's gone off the front page and the inside pages. That amount of life, not worthy of a comment. But we've half a page from a former ambassador, significantly, telling us that the threat from what happened with the Belarusian government is a threat to a rule-based international order. He actually quotes Bob Dylan, and he talks about the sound of thunder roaring out as a warning. And significantly, that gentleman and others like him and women have failed to talk about the thunder in the sky that led to the death of babies, children, women and elderly people in Palestine. No standing together for that. But we can stand together all of a sudden in relation to piracy in the sky and a threat to rules-based democracy. What rules govern the behaviour of Israel? What rules govern our response in relation to Israel when you look at the background in relation to Palestine? If we look back, and I don't have the time, but I'm going to take some of them. On 4 occasions since Hamas, who I condemn the actions of Hamas and their rockets into Israel, absolutely no hesitation in condemning them. Since 2007, Israel has launched major offensives. You know what they call it, Minister? Mowing the lawn. Operation Protective Edge in 2014. Between the 8th of July and the 27th of August, 2,104 Palestinians were killed. Small numbers on the Israeli side, equally unacceptable. But the imbalance is clear to be seen. Operation Pillar of Defence. I mean, this is an abuse of language. Operation Pillar of Defence, 2012. Between 14th and the 21st of November, 167 Palestinians were killed, including 87 civilians. 6 Israelis that time, 2 soldiers and 4 civilians, and so on. Operation Castled, 2008-2009. Listen to these words, Operation Castled. Between the 27th of December 2008 and the 18th of January 2009, an estimated 1,391 Palestinians were killed, including an estimated 759 civilians, including 344 children and 110 women. How many Israelis were killed? 13, 10 soldiers and 3 civilians. Only one side has clearly violated international law. When Israeli acts, we call it self-defense. When the Palestinians act, we call it acts of terrorism. Now, surely, Minister, you might help to clarify language in this area. That's the least you might do. I'm not sure why you're not agreeing with the motion today. I would describe it as a very modest, moderate motion. I would have liked if it had gone further. And as I said at the beginning, I didn't, in the interest of unity, in the interest of this small Dáil and this small country using their one voice and their moral courage to stand up to what Israel is doing. And my empathy has always been with the Jewish nation going back. That's what we were reared on. But what has happened in relation to Palestine is simply butchery and unacceptable. It is a blatant breach of international law. Words fail me, which is unusual. Words fail me in relation to this, and particularly into the language used in relation to the piracy in the sky, in relation to Belarus and the action there. More than 100,000 people have had to leave their homes. 800,000 people have no access to piped water, according to UNICEF. Infrastructure was deliberately targeted, including schools, including churches, including hospitals, including clinics. The headquarters of the Ministry of Health was targeted directly. We're in trouble with a cyber attack on our computers where we foolishly didn't act in time to protect them, and we think we have problems. And all of these bombs and this thunder in the sky, it's down on a civilian population, and we can't act together in unison with one voice to say, please, you cannot do this in our name. We who have a proud history of standing up to colonization. This is colonization by Israel. This is illegal occupation. We have a program for government, and you have committed in that program for government to recognize the state of Palestine as part of a lasting settlement. And you go on specifically because you anticipated that this would be necessary. In advance of that, when we believe doing so will progress efforts to reach a two-state solution or protect the integrity of Palestinian territory. How long more are you going to wait to protect the integrity of Palestinian territory until there's no territory left, not to mention men, women and children? At what point are you going to come into this Dáil and tell us now is the time to protect the integrity of the Palestinian nation and fulfill our commitment in the programme for government?
Thank you.